a really lovely day. It finally feels like spring has sprung, and it's the perfect day for bringing you what we're speaking about today, which is avoiding burnout. Now, we're talking about this on a Friday afternoon when perhaps you might have had a really busy week and you are feeling the pain. And I thought perhaps a Friday afternoon was the perfect time to talk about this, get it out in the open, ready to tackle the weekend, try and blow away all those cobwebs with this sunshine, and perhaps start a new week come Monday with a completely new strategy. So anybody that is experiencing any level of, not necessarily even burnout, just stress, or just, tired, had enough kind of feeling, this is for you. And the reason I say that is because I've experienced this myself, and I don't think I ever called it burnout, though looking back I'm pretty sure that's what it was, but I never gave it a name, because to me at that point it was very much not about me. Everything was everybody else's fault. And if they just stopped doing that, and they just stopped, doing this or making me feel like that, and everybody else is like, causing all of these things and giving me more things to do, I didn't see it as a problem within myself that could be solved. The answer for me was, well, everyone has to just stop doing all this and making me feel this way. That's what it felt like to me. So I didn't even know at that time that it was burnout. And so I think it's really important that we talk about recognizing when you're approaching that stage, and recognizing perhaps the symptoms and the way that we're feeling in terms of whether it's your job, your business, your general day-to-day life, when everything feels like it's just kind of falling on top of you. And the person that I want to bring out for you today is somebody that I originally met, I would say probably 6 months ago, when I saw her speaking on stage. And it was actually, I think it was probably the first time she'd ever spoken on stage. And I remember her being very nervous to go up there, but she absolutely smashed it. She was absolutely fine. And she's now completely smashing the world in her business and lifestyle, and teaching these things to others, and is getting ready to speak on a big stage again. And this time it's more of a big deal. So I'd really like to welcome this person who is going to share with you all of her knowledge on how to avoid burnout and recognizing those symptoms in yourself. I'd like to introduce you, please, to Laura Rowe. Hi, Laura. Welcome.
Hello. Oh, what a beautiful introduction. Oh, thank you so much for having me.
You're absolutely welcome. And it made sense, actually, for me to contact you and to speak about this, because like I said, one, I've experienced this myself without even realizing that's what I was experiencing. And, I'm one of those people who before, maybe a few years ago, I didn't know how to relax. Yeah. And I didn't even think I needed to. I was just like full throttle all the time. And I kind of still am a little bit, but I do know now when I need to take myself off for a walk or whatever. And I figured that if I didn't recognize it in myself and got to the point where I was, there must be a lot of other people who are feeling the same. And I'm certain of it.
Yeah, I mean, that was me as well. Honestly, that was me. What you just said completely resonated. I found myself actually more than once, I think, when I look back over the years, struggling burnout, but it just didn't, when you were introducing before, burnout just didn't seem to be a word that people use. It's not a very common word, and I suppose it's not a medical diagnosis, but it's the perfect way to describe when your physical and emotional exhaustion, which is pretty much how you define it. I experienced it myself, and there is so many people, and it's something that really should be addressed a bit more, because we can really prevent it. we can really help ourselves from getting into that situation. And also I can help you as well if you are in that situation. I'll start to move out of it, which I've got that learned experience as well. Definitely.
Like the word I used to use to describe myself was, I'm just frazzled. I was just like fried. My brain was fried.
Frazzled, definitely.
I just felt like, I'd only have to walk in from work and someone say, "What's for tea?" And I'd be like,
It is, isn't it? It's just that one more thing on top, and everything just feels like it's piling on top, higher and higher and higher. And it's normally at the point where you just explode or you just melt, whatever it is that is your tipping point. Whatever causes that is not what the bigger picture is. It's just that last little thing that goes on the top, and it just knocks the deck of cards all over the place.
I definitely agree with that, because I was a teacher and I worked in a school where I obviously had to be very patient with the children all the time. And I spent a lot of time taking a deep breath, walking away, counting to 10 and going again. I must have done that so many times throughout the day. So then when at the end of the day, I walk into my own home, and like one of the kids or something will say to me like, "Well, when are we having something to eat?" Like I can snap at them. And so they got it. Or my partner, he got it, just because it's kind of my safe space and I could get away with it there. But it wasn't their fault. It was actually nothing they'd done. They were just saying what they've always would have said to me.
Exactly. And that's it. You used a key word there, which is safe space. Once we can hold on to these emotions, and more often than not, when we think we're in that situation, that we're taking those deep breaths, what more often than not we're doing is holding our breath. We're holding in those emotions, and we're just squeezing onto them because now is not the time, and we just swallow and push it down. And then we go to our safe space and we exhale. And when we exhale is when usually we start snapping, because we've hit our level for that day or however long it is. You get to that point and you just no. It's usually someone gets it, and then that creates a bit of a snowball effect, really, because I know from myself I did the same thing. And when it was my son, I would come home and I just snap, and then instantly once you've snapped, you've got guilt, because it's not their fault. Whoever it is that you've just taken it out on, it's not their fault. And then you have this guilt because you've just done this. And then that piles on top of another stress and pressure, and it creates this snowball that gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's the stress container, isn't it? We've all got this stress container, and it fills and fills and fills. And if you don't do anything to help yourself to relieve that stress, so whatever it is that makes you feel good, that's your go-to de-stress. If you don't do that, you're filling up this container to the top. And in doing things that could be a sport or an art or something that helps you relax, you're releasing you're turning that stress release valve, and it opens up and the stress comes out and the container is back to empty. I hope that makes sense. But that's what we need to do, and more often than not we don't realize, and it just fills and fills and fills to the top, and then it overflows, usually at home on the family. Bless them.
What would you say then to something? Because I know what my response to that would have been. I would have said, well, I haven't got time for that. I'm already stressed with all the things that I've got to do. I haven't got time to look after myself as well. What would you have said to me?
At the time when that would happen? Well, I would have said to you that, one of the things that I always talk about is reframing. So you're reframing a situation, and you're looking at prioritizing your situations as well. But the thing about speaking to you in that situation, if you've already overflowed, there's only a certain way that I can help you and speak to you at that point. And really all we need to do there is help you calm down, help you to relax, help to open that valve and release that stress, because at that point you're in fight or flight. And once you've moved into that fight or flight, you just want to get the hell out. What your brain is saying to you is danger. I need to get away from here. And you just want to be gone. And that's why you're reacting in that situation, because it's a space you just can't get out of, and you'll just snap. So in that situation, when that happens, I would then just talk to you, speak to you about how you're feeling, ask you to just start to breathe and to calm. And we would move you then gently out of that state, usually breath work. That's the best. Once you've tipped, that's the best, is to just focus on your breath.
Do you know what? I hear that such a lot. And it's obviously something that I've learned over time, especially being in these kind of online circles. People talk about it a lot more. I don't know if it's maybe just known more and it's talked about more at the moment or more recently. I don't know if it was a thing before, but I knew that what I had to do was walk away, take a deep breath. But you're right. I just did it then. Held my breath.
Yeah, and we do think that we're doing that. We do, and you know, don't get me wrong. There are people that will be doing it, but we often feel that, you know, we're taking a breath, but we're almost taking an angry breath, if that makes sense, because you're in that space. You're really sort of taking this deep breath, but you're holding on to it. And again, that's all energy as well. You know, that's negative energy that you're holding on to in your body, and you just need to relax. But when you do when you do focus on your breath, you need to focus on it in a relaxing way as well. So almost visualizing that every time you exhale, a part of your body is starting to relax. You know, you drop the shoulders down, and if you become mindful of the way that you're breathing, then you're more likely to breathe in a more effective way rather than, you know, just we've all done. We've all been there. We can all relate, I'm sure.
Back then, and I'm talking, you know, a few years ago, nobody actually spoke to me about, you know, meditation or just general mindfulness or just calm. Nobody spoke about it. And I didn't even, I just never even considered it because it just wasn't on my radar at all. Whereas now it seems so obvious to me that that's what I needed to do. Whereas in the moment, I don't know. I just know. So do you think this is something that has come about more in the last few years, or has it always been out there and I just haven't known about it?
Personally speaking, I think there is a lot more awareness towards emotions, towards how people are feeling, how you know, there definitely is an increase in the way people speak about this, and obviously the words that are being used at the moment. But for me personally, I've practiced yoga probably, I think we're coming up to about 20 years. We might have just tipped 20 years now. But for all of that time that I practiced yoga, that was my go-to. Whenever I needed to release that valve, I would always go to a yoga class. Now, I never remember in the classes being taught, I mean, obviously, don't get me wrong, we were taught breath work, but we were never really taught them to be mindful about it. And I know that doesn't sound great in a yoga class, but it was more, I don't know how to describe it really. It was more that you would go for the fitness, for the exercise, and you would learn a little bit about how to breathe during it. But like I say, for 20 years I practiced, and everybody thought I could meditate because I did yoga, and I couldn't. I could not get my head around it. Nobody ever explained to me really how to do it. But because I would always feel stressed and that burnout and overwhelm was happening, people would say, well, how is that possible? You practice yoga? Surely you must be super zen.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, I probably should be, but you know, it's that sort of expectation that people have as well. But I found that for me, it was really difficult to be able to find support that I needed. And like you said, that the words, it wasn't really talked about. And, you know, meditation was something that you would imagine a guru sat, or a monk, or someone just sat in absolute bliss and just finding this complete space of harmony that for me just felt so unreachable, even though I practiced yoga. And I just just couldn't understand how they would do it. Obviously now I teach it, and I teach it so simple and so easy, because I don't want anybody to ever feel like that it's so unattainable. So for now, for me, that definitely, I find that it's talked about a lot more. I think there's a lot more awareness around it than there used to be. I think it's necessary. These things have always been there. Like we've said, we definitely struggled with burnout and overwhelm and stress, but it was never talked about. It was definitely never supported in a way that it should be. And if anything, I feel that there was always one box that you would go in, and it was a depression box. Well, if you're struggling, then you go into this depression box, and this is how we'll treat it as depression. And don't get me wrong, burnout can lead there, but it doesn't have to start there.
No, you're absolutely right. And I feel like we're talking, like in the olden days, it wasn't.
It wasn't that long ago.
Years ago, like 3-4 years ago, maybe. Yeah. But you're right, it wasn't spoken about. And I wondered whether I just learned more about it now because I changed the circles and the people that I'd surrounded myself with. And so I thought maybe that's why I was learning more about it. But actually, in, for example, the teaching profession that I came from, I know they are starting to bring this into effect and talk about it more, but I still feel that it's a tick box. It's not necessarily, it's not done in a meaningful way. It's a tick box. Yeah, we're looking after our professionals. But I don't know how well it's taken. I think by those, I suppose most people, if they really understood that they needed to take time away and to learn how to meditate, they would go and do it. But I'm not sure anyone is actually out there teaching it to, like teachers, nurses, those people who really need it in like those. You actually go into workplaces and teach these
I have done it. That did stop during the pandemic when we all moved everything online. But yeah, I've worked with the NHS, I've worked with colleges, universities, students and teachers, a lot of professionals. But don't get me wrong, there is still a bit of a stigma there. But in the last, I'd say, I've been teaching this now 4 years. So in the last 4 years, meditation has become the fastest growing industry behind yoga. So we're always one step behind America, and it's just absolutely booming in America, and we're just right behind them. And obviously now people are even talking about breathwork. I've been telling people to breathe for years, but now it's a thing.
But it's a good thing, isn't it? It's a good thing that it's spoken about now, and the awareness is there, because and talking about how I didn't even recognize that I was at the point of burnout. So what would you say to somebody as to try and recognize in themselves those key points or those key feelings when they're heading in a direction that they perhaps don't want to go?
Yeah, I think for everybody it can be a little bit different. It's that feeling of overwhelm. That's a feeling of not being able to cope, almost that you've what's the word? You've bitten off more than you can chew. You feel as though everything's piling on top and everything starts to get heavy. You'll find that you've maybe lost interest in things that you might have previously found your go-to. You just don't have that same spark anymore, is probably the best way. And everything just feels heavy. Like you said before, you'll get a little bit snappy with the kids or the family, and you know in yourself when you're not feeling quite right. And if you can't put your finger on it, the techniques that I teach and that I'm going to talk to you about in a little bit, they're things that can help you no matter how you're feeling, whether it's burnout, whether it's just a bit of overwhelm or stress, or whether it's starting to snowball into a little bit more.
Yeah. And so if you were in, let's say, a job would you be encouraging somebody to take time off from their career to kind of rein that back in and bring them back to themselves?
Yeah, absolutely.
No way, right? It just sounds so silly, and I'm clearly my own worst enemy. But there is no way that I would allow myself to be that person who, she's gone off with stress. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, and again, it's that stigma again, isn't it? It's the societal expectations, and for me, what I teach, especially when I teach corporate, is it's teaching them how to slow down in order to speed up. So when we slow down and we pause, and we don't even have to move straight into a state of meditation. It's giving yourself that time to, like I said before, exhale and drop the shoulders and just come back home to yourself. So when you give yourself that time to sort of slow down, the brain starts to slow down as well. And when that happens, those stress hormones that you're living in, I mean, we haven't even talked about fight or flight, but you're in this state of stress, which produces the stress hormones, adrenaline, cortisol, noradrenaline. Well, when you start to relax and calm down and let yourself just be, when thoughts or worries pop into your head, just let them go. We're not even talking about meditation now. It's just letting yourself pause and rest. When you start to move into that state, your brain starts to react in a positive way. So besides those happy hormones that start to creep in, then that start to make you feel good, you start to really become in control again of how you're feeling. And not only does that happen, but when you're in that state, and again, when you move into that state of a deeper level of consciousness through meditation, you then begin to switch on really important responses in the brain. And that part of the brain starts to kick in and you gain clarity. So all of a sudden, those things that were stressing you out, or that thing that was stopping you couldn't quite put your finger on something, or you're a bit blocked in what direction to move in, all of a sudden this clarity and the answers that you're looking for come. Yeah. And you gain this confidence from that, because you've actually let yourself filter out all of that noise, all of those expectations and all of that busyness. You've just let it all go and you can hear yourself again. And it sounds simple, and it can, once you've learned how to do it, and it really is pretty much as easy as what I've just said, with a few techniques added on, once you've let yourself get into that state of just being, all of the answers come. And like I say, that slowing down to speed up, that makes you more productive. It makes you more focused. It gives you more drive. And therefore, when you go back to work or back to whatever it was you've paused from, you are in this completely different state of mind, and you're able to just focus forwards with real sort of drive. It's amazing, honestly. The things that I teach are magic. What happens to you, and you hold all of this within you anyway. I just give you that little key to release the valve, let all that rubbish out, and then you can hear yourself and you can really focus on what's important to you.
I definitely find that I can take myself off to walk my dog, and there's a difference. There's two different ways. I'm kind of one of those people who I always need to be learning something. I'm soaking everything up like a sponge, and I've always felt that when I was walking my dog, I was wasting time, because I could have been listening to something like a podcast or whatever, catching up on something. And so I'd be like marching along, like I'd forget that I'd taken the poor dog with me. I'd be just marching. And it would just fly by. And then sometimes, in fact, there was a time when recently actually, my phone was dead and I couldn't take it. I was like, I was really annoyed. I have to go out my phone. I didn't take my phone with me, and I had such a nice walk. It was a day like this. I was just like noticing.
You become more present.
Yeah. And I had random thoughts were coming into my head and ideas and things, and I thought, wow, why don't I do this all the time? It was actually a really nice leisurely walk, and I felt so much better for it when I got back. So actually better to take that time to process that information than carry on loading more into my ears and into my brain, I guess.
Absolutely. If you think about, we talk about mental fitness and mental wellness. When you think about physical, for example, so people quite happily look after their physical fitness, they'll go to the gym. When you think about how you work your muscles in the gym, you need to give your muscles a rest day. So whatever part of your body you're working, then the work that you've done doesn't actually come into effect for your muscles until your rest day. And so it's the same as when we look after our brains and our emotional state. When we take that rest day or that rest moment or that pause, that's when the magic really starts to happen. For me, I find if I don't have time for a meditation, I normally do meditate every day, but we're all human and we'll all get a bit busy. But for me, the best time to just take time to really focus and recharge is in the shower. So when I'm in the shower, I do practice my breath work in the shower, which is dead simple. I can show you in a minute. But I want a whiteboard. I've said this before. I want to put a whiteboard in the shower, because when you get into that, a shower is something that you can do on autopilot. So you can wash your hair, you can wash your body. It's something that you do constantly. You don't even have to think about it. So whilst you're doing what you're doing and you're not thinking, your brain is going into that state of relaxation when all these ideas and all this creativity is popping into your head. So I'm thinking, I want to be able to write it down. And then when I get out of the shower, I've forgotten half of it. It does come back, but I've forgotten half of it because my brain kicks back into what do I need to do next?
Yeah.
But
it's funny you should say that, because my stepson, he's 16 and he gets in the shower and he can be in there an hour. And we're all like, what the hell do you do?
My son's the same. Yeah.
What are you doing? And he said, I don't know why, but I just get loads of ideas when I'm in the shower. And that, I've thought about it and I thought, well, that's because the rest of the time his eyes are on his phone or he's listening to something or watching something. He doesn't actually ever have a time where he's just doing nothing. Unless he's in the shower. So now I'm like, I'm just gonna have to leave him in there.
Yeah, I do. When my son has showers, his are about 45 minutes to an hour. And I just leave him to it, because when he comes out, he is full of these great ideas and he loves to do creative writing and stories and drawing. And when he comes out, he's just drawing all these amazing pictures. But yeah, that's definitely a thing, being able to, you move into that autopilot and your brain just goes, and then all this magic happens. So that's the quickest and best example I can give you of how creative and how responsive the brain can be when you drop it down into that lower state of rest.
Yeah. So what other tools can you give us to help us to bring ourselves down and into that state? What can we do?
Okay, so for me, it's the main things that I teach are movement, meditation, and mindset. So they're the three things that are really going to focus and help you to move out of that state if you're in that state, or help you to prevent yourself snowballing into that state. So when it comes to movement, it can really be something as simple as just gentle stretches. It can be yoga, walking the dog, like any sort of exercise that's your go-to. It can even be, we can start to release those happy hormones even with just a stretch, or, wiggling the fingers, rotating the wrists, because you can find that when you're working at a desk or you're working at home, whatever, that place that starts to build up stress, whatever work you're doing, you find that you're quite stagnant, you're still when you're doing this work, and that traps energy in the body. And that energy in the body then can manifest itself into more stress and worry. And we get those aches in the shoulders and all of those pains. It's because we're holding on to our stress. So just simple as moving the wrists, rolling the shoulders, get up, go for a little walk when you're coming back to your desk. Something as simple as that, as short as that, can really give you a nice mindset reset. If you don't have time to go for a long walk, or a yoga session. I've got yoga sessions that I teach that are 5 minutes. that you don't have to do these things in a long period of time. I like to teach people tools to put into their toolkit that they can use and fit into their day, doesn't become another thing on their to-do list. So nice, short, simple movements. Like I say, meditation, 10 minutes a day. If you don't have time for a meditation, you can always put on a guided relaxation, just something that puts you in that space. Or like we talked about, just go and jump in the shower every morning, or again every evening, and just give yourself that extra few minutes in the shower. Whilst you're in the shower, you could be breathing. We all breathe, but you know what I mean. That nice deep breaths in through the nose and blow the breath out through your mouth. But make sure we're not chest breathing. So we really want to be breathing with our diaphragm. So imagine when you inhale, you breathe in. Almost imagine you're sending that breath deep down into your hips. So you want your tummy to expand. Really fill the tummy, and then blow that breath out through the mouth. Those nice deep breaths, and really controlled, take your time. They could really help you. And then again, in that state in the shower, you'll find that you just can really, really switch off. That's a good one. And then mindset, we touched on it earlier. I always find that a lot of people say you just need to be positive, just be positive. And for me, I find that quite a negative statement, because it puts pressure on people. It puts more pressure on people who may be in that fight or flight, or that state of moving towards a depression. Whereas if you're just saying that you just need to be positive, it can really have a detrimental effect on someone's mental health, that they're already in a place of struggle as it is, and you're giving them something that seems really unachievable. So I don't tell people to be positive, but I do ask them to be mindful and look towards a reframe. So reframing situations rather than expecting yourself to just move into another situation. So thinking about why something, rather than why is this happening to me? What is this giving me? What am I learning from this opportunity? And even when you feel that you're in a really dark space, or a space that's just too much, if you pause and think, well, what is this state doing to me? How is being in this state affecting my body? How does this state feel? When you start to just become mindful of how it's affecting you, you can think, oh, being in this state makes my shoulders hurt. Oh, and you drop your shoulders. Just something simple like that, rather than these high expectations. Just start to become aware of how it's making you feel when you're in that state, can have an amazing effect on just, like I said, dropping those shoulders. You have no idea how many people have their shoulders up. I teach classes. I've taught festivals and all kinds of things, like hundreds and hundreds of people in front of me. And I get them to breathe. And then I just say, now relax your shoulders. And you should see the amount of shoulders that just go, oh, and it's like a Mexican wave of shoulders. We just don't realize we hold so much tension in our bodies. So it's just really having that awareness. And of course, I teach people to use like positive affirmations. So again, that can be a nice reframe. And journaling. Journaling doesn't have to be sitting down and writing a dear diary and being there all day. I prefer to teach people to journal where they don't even look at the paper. They just put a pen in their hand, and they could even close their eyes if they wish, and they just write. And it doesn't even have to be legible. You could write the same word, write over each word. So it's, it just looks like a big load of scribble on the page. But you don't ever have to read that. It's just so it's not in here. We don't need it in here. We need it out. And sometimes the best way to get it out is to just not even look at the paper and just write what you're thinking. Write words. You don't even have to write in sentences. Just brain dump, get it all out. And that is has a huge impact on my clients when we do that one, especially.
I would say that probably is the number one tip that has been shared here in this group by almost every person that I bring in. Every guest has shared that same thing, whereas I've always found it's something that I found difficult. But having you've said it like that, actually, I do this, because I've got this notepad and it's full It's full of things that I've written down, but that's me just brain dumping, isn't it?
Emptying, yeah.
Calling it journaling. It's just every time I need to get something out of my head, I write it down. And I'll go back to it eventually. It's just...
Well, maybe you won't, it doesn't matter.
Well,
you're not storing it in this file of facts. It doesn't need, not everything needs to be here. And I think that's the most important thing, because I've always find the word journaling quite intimidating. Yeah. And I did when I first, or even before I started getting into this, and I was told to journal and write down my thoughts. It felt like I had to write a story. Yeah. And it had to be able to, you had to be able to read it back, and you had to be able to go over it. And for me, I didn't need to write a story for someone to be able to read. I just needed to get this noise out of my head. And so I would just write. And then eventually I was thinking, why am I writing on the lines? Why am I trying to make it so neat? And that almost thinking about how neat you're writing, almost thinking about having it on the lines and being able to read it back, that's extra thought that you don't, at that point, you just don't need it. Just let go and just write down words or letters, or people doodle, they do little symbols, or they doodle if they're on the phone on hold, you draw stars or pictures or whatever it is you draw. That's another form of release. You're just taking your time just to release some stuff. So for me, that's the most important thing. Journaling doesn't have to be hard. You even have to call it journaling, call it scribbling if you want to. Just get it out. And that's the most important thing, is to not hold on to stuff that doesn't serve you anymore, or even if it does serve you, write it down in a notepad that you'll go back to, and then there's a notepad that you'll never go back to.
Yeah. I was just thinking, actually, as you were saying that I think I always thought that journaling was about having to put your feelings down on the paper. But I always found that really hard, because I would always think, I'm all right. Do you know what?
It's like, people think it's like a Dear Diary, and you have to really,
But actually, now you've said that and realised that I do write a lot in a day, actually, but they're ideas. So obviously that's what I need to get out of my head. If it was something in here that I was feeling, that's what would come out. But it doesn't. And somebody did once say to me, and it really resonated with me, and I was saying, I just find it really hard. And she said to me, have you ever considered that maybe you just don't need to? I was like, no, maybe I just need to. But now I am writing a lot, but just not calling it journaling.
Exactly. And it's, it's not something that you have to do every day either. The tools that I teach are exactly what they are. They're tools. We don't know what's around the corner. We don't know what's coming. We don't know, what's going to happen from one minute to the next. And we don't know how we're going to respond. And all these are tools, so that when something happens, or when you're feeling a certain way, you've got a whole toolkit there that you've built and created, that you can pick and choose what you need whenever you need it. It's not that you have to journal every day. And journaling doesn't have to be all of, like you just said, it doesn't have to be all of the bad stuff. You can journal all of these great ideas that might be stopping more ideas from coming. So write them all down, and then you got space for new ones.
Exactly that. Actually, just before this, I was upstairs doing something and I had an idea. I was like, I really need to write that down. So I literally ran downstairs, wrote it down, wrote 3 words, ran back upstairs again.
Exactly. That's why I want a whiteboard in my shower. But I have a little notepad at the side of the bed as well. And the notes section of my phone is full, because that, I've got Post-it notes everywhere. I do write bits, and most of the time I don't go back to them, but I don't need them. And once I've got them out and I've written them down, that then sparks something else, and then I'll remember that I can go back and get that. And it's just about quietening the noise in your head. You don't need to have so much going on. There are other alternatives, you know, there's other places you can put all of that information. There's ways to get rid of that and filter it out. And what's really important that has come up for me with quite a few of my one-to-one clients is they're always really conscious of journaling and almost hold back a little bit because of fear that somebody else might read what they've written. Yeah. So what I've always said is, you know, if you do write something and, you know, it is legible and you don't want anyone to read it, once you've written it and you've gotten it out of your head, scrunch it all up, take it out into the garden and burn it. And not only does burning it stop somebody from seeing it that you may not want to see it, it also is a nice release, because as that burns and as the smoke goes off into the air, you are releasing and letting that shit go. Whatever it was that's been really emotional, or that you need to maybe say to somebody that you can't say, or whatever it is, when you burn it and let it go, there's such a weight is lifted as well. It's almost ceremonial the way it happens. Yeah. But that's a really good tip as well, that I would say that, you know, if you're not necessarily have your privacy, or you're concerned about privacy when it comes to journaling, you know, you can get rid of it. I know one of the ladies that I did work with quite a bit, she would take her journaling, she'd keep it in her pocket, she'd go on her dog walk, and she'd get rid of it, and she'd burn it out in the woods when she's on a dog walk, because she didn't want to have to explain to her husband or her kids what she was doing. And, you know, because that was her private time, it's her therapy to be able to do it. So she'd take it on a dog walk with her. There's always ways.
Yeah. Do you know what I've often thought? You know, if I got run over by a bus tomorrow and everyone read all my notepads, they'd be like, my God, I'm a psychopath. You know how we're told to write down these affirmations and all these, and not everyone understands, do they? You know, not everyone understands. Like, my partner would read some of that and would be like, what?
Yeah, I agree.
Maybe I should start taking it to the woods.
One thing I will say, though, before we do finish is, you know, stress does have a really bad reputation. You know, we when we hear the word stress, we almost automatically assume that it's negative. But stress is really good for you. I know we've really talked about how bad it is for the last, 45 minutes. Yeah. But stress is actually, you know, we need stress. You know, it can help to sharpen your cognitive functions. It can really help you to perform at your best, you know, in times of need. So keeping you alert and focused on your goals. Yeah. We need stress for those reasons. And sometimes we even, you know, we seek out stress. You know, if we ever thought about when we watch horror movies, you know, we're putting ourselves purposefully in that stressful situation. You know, when we're, playing computer games and your stress builds, you need that sort of adrenaline rush to be able to do whatever it is you're in. I don't play games, so I'm not even going to pretend. Whatever it is you need to do on your computer game to win. You know, or even competitive sports. We need that to put ourselves in those stressful situations for that hit of adrenaline. And that is important, but it's only in short bursts. So when we have that short burst of adrenaline, it gives us what we need in that moment, and then it's gone. When stress becomes a problem is when we don't have control over the stress. So we start to move into that fight or flight, and, you know, we don't have control over our stress then. And fight or flight is important for us in, you know, caveman days, when, you know, we had to, you know, be really careful of all of these dangers all the time, and we needed to be super alert. And, you know, it is good to stop you from stepping out in front of a bus or putting your hand on something that might burn you. You know, we do need to have those receptors working, and they are positive. Yeah. They just become more negative when we lose control of them. You know, and even in terms of chronic stress or long-term stress, you know, that can really start to move you towards illness then as well. So it's about having a healthy stress management. So being able to learn how to dial down your stress when you don't need it, and back up again, when you do need it. And that's the most important thing. And these tools, that movement, meditation, mindset, those little tools will help you really create that balance, because that's what we want. We don't want to switch our stress off, because we do need it. We want to create that healthy stress management, that balance. So just wanted to say that before we do finish, because stress gets a really bad rep, but it's actually, we do need it. It's good.
It's a good point, actually. I was just thinking that it's almost like, when we're always encouraging people to step out of their comfort zone, you have to feel that stress to put you in that situation that's then going to take you on to that next step, haven't you? So you do have to put yourself in those stressful situations, even like coming on something like this. We both have done this for a first time once upon a time, and that was putting ourselves in a stressful situation, wasn't it?
Yeah. And you do need an element of it to be able to, face your fears and do those things. But like I say, it's important that we don't keep ourselves in that state of stress. We use it when we need it, and we bring ourselves back down. So being able to learn how to, dial up and dial down is so important. Especially for us, we're going to need to dial it up when we jump on stage.
Oh, yes. Well, this is brilliant. So what I'd really like to know is, if there is anybody that has been watching or is watching a replay who might be feeling these exact symptoms, feeling like the stress is coming on, perhaps they're heading towards burnout, perhaps they're just looking for a bit of guidance, where can they find you and what you do?
Okay, so you can find me. Obviously my name is Laura Rowe, but you can also find me through my brand, my business, which is called Align Lifestyle. I'll pop all the details for that on anyway, but I have, I've got a Facebook group as well. So that's full of tips and tricks and positive mindset, affirmations and things, and really being able to be in a space of like-minded people. So that's one option. The other option I've got is I can pop a link for a little freebie in here, which is 5 tips. So 5 ways to be able to balance your busy mind. So when you're feeling really stressed and overwhelmed, there's a little guide that I've created that I'm more than happy to share with you if you want me to pop into the group as well. And then I offer a membership, a wellness subscription. So those things that I've talked about today and much more, you can have meditation, yoga, breathwork, guided relaxations, EFT sessions. There's so much on there, but they're done the sessions are short and quick. So you can have anything from 5 minutes to an hour, depending on what time you've got. There's loads of stuff there. So I can pop all the details on, but Align Lifestyle is how you're going to be able to find me.
Fantastic. That is great. So please share all of those things. And anybody who feels that they would benefit from those, please do, drop in and say hello to Laura and tell her that you've watched and let her know how she can help. And that would be great. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. I've loved this afternoon.
And I'm actually going to go for a walk now and take my dog without my phone.
Amazing.
Sunshine. So thank you so much. If anybody watching has any questions or anything at all, just please pop them in the comments, and either myself or Laura will get back to you. Okay, thanks a lot. Enjoy your afternoon and your evening and weekend, everyone, and we'll speak to you soon. Bye.
Thank you. Take care.